On a cold, snowy night in 1991, the world stood stunned by an unexpected scene. A vast empire crumbling, its walls cracking, its thrones shaking beneath the feet of those who thought it would last forever. The Soviet Union had fallen, and with it, the socialist hopes that had once captured the minds of many politicians and intellectuals. The curtain closed on a story whose final chapter was never completed. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, the liberal order stood amazed and elated, like a king emerging from battle unscathed, waving the flags of victory and proclaiming with a mix of pride and astonishment, "We won. History has ended." Since that moment, liberalism has acted as though it were the only truth, the magical formula, a new religion for a world weary of ideologies, longing for comfort. It was hailed as the highest form of freedom, justice, and the only path to prosperity. But in the face of these grand claims, a question arises. Was it really so? The response comes swiftly. You simply don't understand freedom. But what freedom are they talking about exactly? Liberalism is a direct derivation from the Latin word liberalis, which means a free person. But such innocent terms are not as pure as they seem. If we go back to the roots of liberalism, we find that it didn't start as a comprehensive intellectual system. Rather, it arose gradually as a historical movement with the decline of feudalism in Europe and the emergence of the Renaissance and Industrial Revolution. Merchants and capital owners were seeking a system that allowed them to operate freely, free from the constraints of the church and feudal lords. Thus, the idea of freedom was born, but not in the abstract or ideal sense. It was freedom crafted to serve the interests of these new economic actors. Over time, liberalism developed into a full-fledged ideology, then into a political and economic doctrine, calling for freedom of belief, free markets, and political liberties, such as freedom of assembly and expression. But was liberalism truly committed to these ideals? Here, the first contradictions emerge. While liberalism proclaims absolute freedom, it often limits or contradicts it, depending on the political and economic interests of the dominant powers. So the question becomes, is the problem in those who implement liberalism, or is it in liberalism itself, with contradictions embedded within its very core? When you knock on the doors of political philosophy, one name is engraved boldly at the entrance: Niccolo Machiavelli, the man whose name still ignites controversy in any discussion of the philosophy of rule. No discussion of realpolitik goes without invoking him, as he is best known for advocating the authority of the authoritarian prince. But if Machiavelli was merely a defender of tyranny, what is his connection to liberalism, which claims to defend freedom? To answer this, we need a broader view, beyond just his book, The Prince. While The Prince offers rules for rulers to maintain control over their people, Machiavelli was not opposed to the idea of freedom per se. In fact, he longed to build a strong national state to end the fragmentation that plagued Italy. He believed that tyranny was a temporary necessity, a tool to restore stability. His ultimate goal was not despotism itself, but as he famously taught, the ends justify the means. Thus, tyranny could be a pathway to freedom. Here lies the paradox. The same Machiavelli who portrayed tyranny in The Prince also imagined in the discourses a republican state based on liberty, a system where three forces balance each other: the prince, the elites, and the people. Yet the common thread in both books is a foundational rule of modern political philosophy. Politics is separate from morality. The ruler should not be moral, but pragmatic. He must act to preserve power and the state, not to please abstract values. This is where the core link between Machiavelli and liberalism lies. Although liberalism raises the banner of freedom, it does not base its principles on ethics, but on interest-based calculations. It is interest that determines what is moral and what is not. And so, we live today in a fully Machiavellian world. Great powers preach democracy, while supporting authoritarian regimes when it serves their interests. They promote free markets, while corporate monopolies dominate global economies. They impose sanctions on whomever they wish. They chant slogans of human rights, yet abandon them the moment they conflict with colonial or genocidal agendas. Here, the contradictions could not be clearer. If Machiavelli showed us how politics separated from ethics, and how power preservation became the new standard for what is right, liberal theory paved the way for it under the guise of freedom. Take John Locke, considered a cornerstone of liberal thought. The man hailed as a champion of liberty was in fact a slave trader. He was a shareholder in the Royal African Company, which trafficked Africans into slavery in the colonies. Despite this glaring hypocrisy, researcher Wayne Glauser, in his study on Locke, offers three explanations for this contradiction. The most compelling is that there is no contradiction at all. What Locke did wasn't just individual hypocrisy. It was an expression of liberalism itself, which never truly aimed for universal human liberation. Rather, it sought to secure the freedom of a certain class. We see this clearly in the ideas of French philosopher Montesquieu, the theorist of the separation of powers. While he warned against power being concentrated in one hand, he also defended the privileges of the nobility. In other words, the freedom he envisioned wasn't universal. It was a freedom within a class-based system where elites retained rights denied to others. So when Montesquieu called for individual liberty, he restricted it to property owners and elites, believing this would help them preserve their wealth and status. Taking all these contradictions together, we see that in liberal thought, freedom was never an end in itself. It was a tool for domination, a domination led by a small elite that convinces people they are living under democracy of the people. But when we examine the reality of Western politics, we find a deceptive democracy, where voters are limited to choosing within an elite circle, and no alternative is permitted outside it. This elite operates under a sweeping agenda that serves corporate capitalist interests. In the United States, it is impossible to win the presidency outside the two-party system. The same is true in Britain, where power alternates between conservatives and Labour, and the deception of this democracy is most visible in moments of major political decisions taken without public consent, often even against public will. Who can forget the full political and military support the occupying entity, Israel, received from the West during its current aggression on Gaza, all while Western nations witnessed unprecedented protests opposing this violence? So the question rises once again: are we truly free under liberalism? Or is the freedom we live under just a mask hiding the face of control?